This is Standard Office Procedures, the podcast that helps professionals live and grow through culture, communication, and candor. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Standard Office Procedures podcast. I'm sorry I yelled at you there a little bit. I'm just excited to be here. I'm your host, Grace, and here with me in the studio, as always, is my love, Shannon Miller. I'm sorry I gave your full name.
They know it. It's
That's
fine.
true. It's everywhere. It's Shannon. Say hi, Shannon.
Hi.
Hi. How are you doing today?
I'm just living the dream.
Livin, as they say.
YOLO.
I've never heard that before. And then I started to see somebody who is a bit older than me, and he and all of his friends say it. And I don't know if it's a reference from something. Livin.
I've never heard that before.
Okay,
That's a new one for
You're a
me.
spring chicken like I am. So maybe
I'm
that's
just
why.
a baby.
I'm just a baby. Today we are talking about leadership team building activities.
Nice.
So specifically, activities to do to build your leadership team, right? To foster closeness and trust and psychological safety and just generally kind of create a more cohesive leadership team. So this, I admit, is a pretty niche episode, but fun fact about it. So I am the director of culture at my company. And so I'm in charge of kind of team building for the company as a whole and also specifically for the leadership team. And the other day I had to Google leadership team building activities. And do you know what blog post came up first in Google?
Was it from bluesummitsupplies.com?
It was from bluesummitsupplies.com. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It's almost like we did keyword research.
It's almost like we're an authority on things now. That's scary.
Ugh.
All right. So we're going to talk about leadership team building
Don't tell
activities.
anybody.
Don't tell anybody. First, I want to talk about the why. So why would you invest in leadership team building activities? So essentially, you need to have strong leaders at your company, right? You need to have a strong leadership team that is on the same page, that communicates effectively, and you need trust to have good communication. That's important because strong leaders are responsible for inspiring and motivating the whole team, right? The whole company. And having good, strong leaders in your workplace improves productivity, engagement, and the overall well-being of your team. So like if it's kind of like a top-down thing, right? If your leadership team is bonded and healthy and communicates effectively, then the idea is that hopefully so will the rest of your company,
right,
to a degree, right?
Yeah, I think you can bond with your own team. So say, I'm in charge of the marketing department. I can bond with the marketing department all day long.
Sure.
But if I don't have a good relationship with the other leaders on the team or the leadership of the company, it's only going to go so far into making us an effective and happy department.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, we've experienced in the past. Maybe there are times when like the leadership team isn't quite jiving or, things aren't going as well. And again, I can bond with my team and be having a good time all day long, but it is written all over me if I'm not really happy or I'm having issues. And it trickles down whether I mean for it to or not.
Right.
And so I think it's super important to put a priority on leadership team building between leaders of different departments as well as departments themselves, because without the other isn't going to be very effective.
Yeah, it's an imbalance and you really can't have one without the other. And I think that what you were saying is you hear all the time the term silos in big organizations, like, oh, we have silos, or this is a siloed company, or we're too siloed. And what that is exactly what Shannon is describing, where you have all of these independent departments that are gelling fine. Like marketing's getting along great with marketing, accounting's doing great with accounting, IT's doing great with IT. But like, how are they all working together with each other? Because in an organization, there is no single, well, there might be, but generally there's no single department that completely operates autonomously.
Right.
Everybody has to be interconnected for the entire organization to succeed. And so kind of what Shannon was saying, what I was saying a moment ago, is that if the leadership team is not on the same page and all kind of cohesive and understanding each other, then that has ripple effects and ramifications throughout the entire company. So that's your why. This is why you should invest in leadership team building activities. And let's talk about how you know it's time, right? So how do you know it's time to invest in leadership team building? How do you know that your leadership team is not as connected as maybe they should be? Some signs of unhealthy leadership team, and when I say unhealthy, I mean unhealthy communication and kind of collaboration, are disengaged team members. So that's company-wide, right? Not just in the leadership team, but across the board. A lack of trust between team members. This happens when you don't know each other very well. I don't know you very well. I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if I can bring problems to you. Or I did trust you and there was an incident, or there was some reason that now the trust is broken, but we have to repair it because we're still working together. A lack of trust between team members and management. So, not necessarily leadership team. They're having trouble trusting the leadership team and vice versa. A high turnaround, obviously that is always kind of a, what's that expression? People don't leave jobs, they leave managers.
Yeah.
If you're having high turnaround, I would look at your leadership team first. Slow or ineffective decision making. People feel like they're not empowered to make decisions and move quickly because they don't feel like they have the support or trust of the leadership team. Conflict, anxiety, a lack of innovation and creativity, all these kind of basic things. So if you're seeing one or more, or God forbid, all of these happening at your company, and you are in a position to maybe try to initiate some leadership team building activities, that is such a mouthful. I keep saying it.
Leadership building, team building activities. I think this is really true because, I don't think I realized how important this was in the past, especially when our company was smaller and our departments weren't as big. I think I kind of took for granted the fact that we were all a lot closer by default. And then as we grew, it was kind of like relying on the fact that we were once close, and then maybe one or two new people came into the fold on the leadership team, but it's all good.
Right.
And then I realized, Owen had pointed out how siloed our departments were, just like you just mentioned, silos. And kind of, we all started, forced fun together, doing things together and learning things together. And oh my gosh, I feel like we're so much more effective as a company now. And that, even if something goes wrong, at least I have an idea of what everybody's doing. And I also have an understanding of how other departments are run. And I have an understanding of how other managers might operate their department because I know them. And it makes it so much easier to be effective and feel like other people are also being effective, and it builds trust up. So again, I think it's one of those things where maybe if you're at a tiny company and you're growing or you're adding new leaders, don't rely on the fact that you once had closeness, because I think
have to put effort in.
You have to consistently put effort in. And if you feel like maybe I work over here, you work over there, and that's the way I like it. I think you have to see is that the most effective way of running things?
It might be the way you like it because it's comfortable.
It's
right?
easy.
It's easy. It's more comfortable to say, I don't know them and I don't know how to get to know them. Communication is hard. We talk about communication a lot on this podcast, and one of my dreams is to start a whole podcast all about communication. But I just think that if you don't have effective communication interdepartmentally or inter-leadership team-ally, then you're going to suffer. I think to Shannon's point, what we were saying there was that if you don't know how to communicate with somebody, if you don't know how an idea you have is going to be received, or a comment you have, or a little hey, I saw that this was happening, I think maybe this would be better, so a suggestion, or I saw this is happening, I don't think it's a good idea, so a little bit of a criticism. If you don't know how to communicate that to another leader, it's easier to just do nothing.
Right.
And when you do nothing and everybody on the team is doing nothing, you guys are becoming ineffective. You guys are shooting yourselves in the foot, because together, if you pull all your resources and you have a powerhouse of intelligence, probably most likely in that leadership room, if you're not sharing that intelligence and that knowledge and those ideas, then you're crippling yourselves.
Yeah. I think collaboration between leadership team members is so incredibly important to having an effective and productive company. And again, like you were saying, if trust hasn't been built up between individuals, that can't possibly happen at its fullest capacity.
No, you can't. You can have a piece of it. You can have a facsimile of it, but until there's trust there, it's hard to really do the whole thing. So let's talk about how to build trust. So there are a lot of ways, I want to say first, to build and forge trust between team members. But team building activities are kind of like the age-old proven tactic, and they can look like all kinds of things.
I feel like this is one of those things where we talk about how to get more energy and how to be less burnout. It's go outside.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, it seems so obvious
really
so you don't do it.
Yeah.
But I think this is another one of those examples where it's team building activities can be so effective, but we don't do it because they seem silly.
They seem silly.
Or they seem like a waste of time.
And
we have so much work to do.
Yep.
And it's just not true.
If you invest 2 hours doing something silly to team build, right? That will pay off in the long run with so much more than 2 hours worth of productivity. If you think about it, right? If you invest 2 hours with 8 people in your room, that's, probably a chunk of change depending on salaries and things. To take up 2 hours of people's time, that's not a small investment. However, what you get as a return on that investment is better collaboration, more open communication. It just pays off in dividends, ideally, unless something goes terribly wrong. But generally, that's the payoff. I don't know, but I always feel bad.
Breaks out in the escape room.
Honestly, that could be team building in itself. So I'm glad that you said escape room, because we're going to talk about some tangible, actual, actionable team building activities that you can do with your leadership team or with any team, right?
Yeah.
This doesn't have to be your leadership team. This can be any team, but I think we're using the leadership scope just because, in my experience, it's hard to find things that are leadership team specific.
Yes.
So one of them is the escape room, like Shannon said. So escape rooms are everywhere. I'm really surprised if you're listening and you haven't done one. And if you haven't, please go do one. They're so much fun. Yeah. We've done one as a company, as a whole company before. And that was really awesome. We split this up. Is it 2 rooms or 3 rooms? 2 rooms. We couldn't have been the whole company then. I guess we were a lot smaller.
We were smaller.
Yeah,
It was also pandemic time, so some people weren't
that's
coming
true.
in. And
yeah, we had to be masked. But yeah, so escape rooms are a really good one where essentially what an escape room is, it's forced togetherness problem solving. And I will say they can bring out the best and worst in people, but at least you'll know each other better, which is the whole point. I think that's the key.
Like go into it with a grain of salt and go into it knowing like, I'm going to have fun. Maybe you're a super competitive person and you take this stuff very seriously. Like if this is for work, like do that on your own time.
Yeah, dude.
This is for work, bring some of that, but maybe tamp it down and use the opportunity to truly like hang out with your coworkers, get to know them, collaborate with them, and try not to get too upset with them for not doing things the way that you would do it or to the level that you expect. I think that can be a tough thing to remember.
I have a quick anecdote about what you're describing. So I don't think of myself as hyper competitive, but I like puzzles a lot. And like when there's a puzzle, I feel like I'm usually pretty quick to solve it. And an escape room is a giant puzzle.
Yeah.
And so whenever I'm in an escape room, I tend to want to be the leader. And I think a really good piece of advice that I heard from a conference I went to was if you tend to be the person who speaks first, try not to in this situation. If you're the person who speaks last, try to speak first in this situation. So when I went for work to an escape room, I was like, okay, it is in my nature to kind of dominate and take over and tell people what to do. And I don't want to do that because I want to make sure that I'm fostering as much like collaboration and communication as possible. So I didn't do that. But let me tell you about Owen Franklin.
Oh, God.
He was in my escape room because we split into 2 rooms and I had a really good team. Like, I think I had Megan on my team and Megan's a freaking genius. So I was stoked. I was like, okay, we've got Megan. Like, we're going to win. This is great because I wanted to beat the other room.
Though.
I know. He's really smart too.
I
had them both on my team at first and I was like, oh, this is going to be a shoo-in. Anyway, and so I had Megan, but then I also had Owen and I was like, okay, so it kind of neutralizes.
He's not only not going to help, he's going to get in the way.
Well, here's what happened with Owen. So my competitive ass was all like, okay, I want to win, but I'm going to be cool. I'm being so cool about it. But like Megan was over there solving stuff and the whole team was, not just Megan, the whole team was. But Owen found a chair and he sat in the chair and he was holding a Starbucks coffee, which by the way, he wasn't supposed to have brought into the room, but he was holding a Starbucks coffee cup with his legs crossed.
Did he have his sunglasses on?
He did have his sunglasses on and intermittently he kept going, hey, Grace, do you think this is a clue? And he'd hold up his Starbucks cup and point at the Starbucks logo and then laugh and laugh. And I'd be like, shut up, Owen. And then I'd be trying to actually find a clue. And he'd go, hey, Grace, I got one. And I'd get really excited and turn around and he'd be like, do you think this is a clue?
Was it the Starbucks?
And it was the Starbucks freaking logo. And I was like, stop talking to me. So I will say,
that sounds exactly like I anticipated.
It was the Owenest thing.
Well, I liked what you were saying about if you're the type of person that usually would go in and take charge, maybe pull back. And if you're the type of person that would sit back, maybe step up a little. Because I'm the opposite in that scenario because escape rooms and puzzle building makes me very anxious. I'm dumb. I'm not going to get it. Well, like people will put things together. I'm like, how did you even come up with that? I don't understand. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to get in there and do my best, and I had some wins. I mean, I wouldn't say that I was the leader and I wasn't pulling together.
But you were an integral piece of the team, right? Is what you're saying. Whereas maybe in the past you would have wallflowered a little bit and been like, this is too stressful. I'm just going to leave. But instead you're like, I'm going to put myself in the game. Yes. And we're going to solve this together. Yeah. Which is really the whole goal. You want to make sure to the best of your ability, whether you're a participant or an organizer or an organizer of the event, you want to make sure that for your own part, you are like facilitating collaboration as much as possible.
And I thought that was so interesting to do as a group I had several leaders in my group as well as, just other people from the company. And it was so interesting to learn things about people that I didn't know. If we hadn't done an escape room, if we had just gone to happy hour, which again, it's a great team building activity. Idea, but like if we had just done that, I wouldn't have learned that like maybe Grant was such a good, problem solver. There were a couple other people in the rooms that I was like, wow, they're really good at this. I had no idea that their brain worked that way. And it's so cool because then I could take that information with me. And all of a sudden I felt like I really knew that person better. I really understood more about them.
Which is the whole point.
It's so meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Another game that you could play. This one I don't know about, honestly. I think it sounds really interesting. I've never personally done it. It's called cookie navigation.
Oh yeah, we've talked about this before.
We did. We talked about this on a different podcast, I think.
I don't get it.
I mean, I get it in theory, but in practice, I'm like, okay. But basically, the whole point of the game is communication. And it's talking about how we communicate without words oftentimes. Like, and by that, what I'm saying is like your body language, your tone of voice, eye contact, posture, all kinds of things can have a lot more impact on communication than you realize. And so the way you play cookie navigation, and you can check out our blog post for like a more detailed kind of overview of this, is that you basically only use the word cookie to guide somebody through a series of obstacles. So like in your office, however you want to set it up, you can set up like a limbo stick, like a chair to walk over, like whatever you want to do. But you have to guide them through these obstacles to a finish line, and you can only use the word cookie. So like, I guess it's like if they're approaching something, you go like cookie really urgently.
Like hot, cold?
It's like hot, cold,
Marco
but
Polo.
only with one word.
Interesting.
I know.
You know what it makes me want?
What?
Some
Cookie?
Chips Ahoy chocolate chip cookies.
I want the chewy ones. They're so good.
Ooh, I don't like the chewy ones.
love
Oh,
them.
crispy, please.
No, thank you.
Do you know what we did when we were in elementary school? It was like an excavation project. Did you do this with Chips Ahoy? You get a Chips Ahoy cookie, the crunchy kind, the good kind.
Did you get the chips out?
And you get 2 toothpicks, and you have to like excavate the chocolate chips.
That
out
is
of it.
such a precious game.
So
Here,
fun.
that's another leadership activity you can do. Is excavate the
chocolate chips
with toothpicks. If one person has to hold one toothpick and the other person has to hold the other toothpick.
Oh no,
that would be infuriating.
I hate that. I want my own.
That's not a real activity. Please don't do that. Another one that I actually really love is show and tell.
Oh,
so
that's
it's I
fun.
kind of want to do this with our leadership team.
We
So it's as
should.
basic as it sounds. Like we all remember show and tell from kindergarten or wherever, where you'd bring your favorite thing in and you'd show it off and you say, this is what this means to me. You can do this as adults. There's no reason you couldn't.
Why haven't we done this?
I don't know. I kind of love it. I wanted to. I didn't know how you guys would feel about it.
I think it sounds awesome.
Will you bring in Indy, your puppy?
Can I?
Yeah, I think so. But basically, it's what it sounds like. It's really important for us to know each other's stories. I mean, that's a really big part of true bonding and true kind of like trust being built is to know where each other came from.
Yeah.
And to humanize each other, right? So when you bring in something that means a lot to you, and you tell your team about it, your team now feels more connected to you.
Well, and you're signaling some vulnerability because you're sharing something that you wouldn't normally share. And I think you could take this as personal as you wanted to, as you personally were comfortable with. But even if it's something small that somebody wouldn't have known about you otherwise, like you like this particular book or, you know, you like to cook this type of food or whatever.
Ooh,
I think that could be,
smart. Puppy and food.
Now we have a new buffet.
I like that.
A new, what was I saying? Buffet team building.
I like that. Buffet team building is a good one.
But, you know, I think that's little things. It doesn't have to be deep. It doesn't have to be deep-seated secrets from your life, but small things to kind of give people a peek under and start to understand you more as a person. And it fosters that communication and, again, signals some vulnerability that you're sharing some of that with another person. I think that's so helpful.
That's exactly right. So I love the idea of doing show and tell as a leadership team.
When are we doing it?
I don't know. In 2 months.
Okay.
We'll do it in 2 months. Another exercise that you guys can do as a team that requires, you know, everyone being in the same space and kind of maybe some Post-it notes is something called the sky's the limit problem solving. It's also called like dream brainstorming, where you basically take off all limitations and you try to solve a problem. And you can totally invent a problem, right? Like you can choose like, I don't know, like you could talk about how to solve world hunger. You can get really deep with it. Or you can solve the problem of like, there's too much traffic on the freeway. What would we do in a perfect world to get rid of it? Well, we build 5 more freeways, one directly from my house to the office. Ha. But the whole point is that you remove constraints like budget, physics, if you want.
Yeah.
I don't know, go crazy. But essentially, it's like you come up with the most like the most wild suggestions that you can, and then afterwards, you guys all talk and collaborate. Not afterwards, during really, you guys all talk and collaborate, and you come up with this like really high, you know, I guess like really, what's what I'm looking for, like high level. Silly, fantastical.
I was thinking.
Fantastical solution to this problem.
I think this would also be fun to do. A lot of times at work, we talk about, well, one day we'll do X, right? Yeah. One day I would love if we had this, or when we get to be a big company, we'll do this, right?
Right.
So maybe that could be something you do. We've always talked about one day we'll create this piece of software. We'll be in a household name or whatever.
Yeah.
And to talk about like, okay, how are we going to do that? How are we going
to get there? Yeah.
You know, and maybe you come up with some cool projects that might spur stuff that you could work on now to start working towards that. That's something that we've talked about in the past. We've done in our brainstorming episode, we talked about lightning sessions, I think, where we do like, you run through like the how might we, how might we. And it's the same thing because we came up with some things that we needed to do and none of them were things we're doing today. None of this, we all have work to do.
It was a fun exercise.
Yeah, and it's cool because now, you know, like a year later, it's like, wow, you know that thing we talked about? Maybe we should start working towards that.
Yeah, so. I think that's true. Like you can come up with all these fantastical things. Like my thing is always, I think that we should hire like The Rock to be our mascot or something. That's not going to happen. But but as we're sifting through these ridiculous suggestions, we'll find a couple that are actually like, you know, maybe we could do that. Why can't we do that? You know? So there's also the possibility that we'll actually get some work done, which is great.
Sure.
But also the point is just collaboration within the team. So that's a really good exercise. And you can also do that one virtually. So just like
absolutely.
Yeah, you can do virtual escape rooms as well. We have a whole blog post about virtual team building. So if you guys are interested in kind of a more virtual look at this, feel free to check that out. So let's talk about a couple of more like quick activities, things that aren't like, let's go to an escape room or let's sit down and do this whole thing. A couple of kind of quick things that you can do off the cuff, just to kind of maybe open a meeting, right? If you have the entire leadership team in a meeting and you guys are about to have some kind of meeting. Why did I say the word meeting 5 times? Anyway.
You're going to meet about your meeting, and then before the meeting, you should meet.
I hate myself today. One thing that you can do is kind of an icebreaker is something called pancakes versus waffles. It's basically a this versus that. And it's like, if you can only have one exist in the world, which one do you choose and why? And you guys all have to kind of discuss and come to an agreement. You can do like kittens versus puppies, or I don't know, like
I feel like
coffee
this could
versus
get really
tea.
intense.
It could. If I was in a room with all of you guys and it was coffee versus tea, I would be the only one being like, let's destroy coffee. Let's eradicate it. I hate it anyway. And I would be overruled.
I feel like you could also do this just kind of as a come and go thing. Like I know in elementary school, during election seasons, they'll have like a class election, but it's like popcorn versus chips or something, and they vote on it, and then whichever one wins, they get to like have it the next day or something. Yeah. And so you could totally do that. You could put something up like on the wall, or you could do a virtual poll or something and get everybody just vote, and whatever it is you get, like
I like that idea.
I think that would be fun.
I should be doing more of these things. All right, another game that you can play is Stranded on an Island. We've all played Stranded on an Island. It's basically if you were stranded on an island and you could only bring one thing or two things or however many things, what would it be and why? And that's another one that you can just kind of use as an icebreaker, and your answers can change. You can do it a couple times, whatever you want to do. But it's basically like there's also the you're stranded on an island. What do you bring to get off? Like to get off the island, I should clarify. And some people are like, I bring a paddle boat. Some people are like, I would bring a teleporting machine. And it's like, well, you're ruining the game. But anyway, that's the game. And then another one, a very short one, is the one word check-in, which I actually really like this one, and I use it sometimes when I'm doing more therapeutic work. Is I say like, how are you describe how you're feeling in one word?
Oh, interesting.
And and it's a good one for like, I kind of like it for beginning of meetings too, because you can kind of gauge like, where are we today? Are we all super enthusiastic and stoked? Are we all feeling a little bit low? Do we have a mix? Whatever. So that's just like another exercise where you say at the beginning of a meeting or just somewhere, describe your mood in one word. And go from there. And make sure it's clear that that the answer doesn't have to be happy, right?
Yeah, I've seen this used on check-ins on social media before for people to like get engagement on their posts. I've seen it done 2 ways. One is leave a GIF, how you feel about the week. Another one is leave 3 emojis that describe your day or something like that, right? Cute. And so that's interesting because you can kind of tell a little story.
Yeah.
And I think those can be really fun. You could totally do this just in a Slack channel, right? At work or if you're on a Zoom meeting, they have the chat bar there. I don't know if you can put GIFs in it. You can probably put emojis in it.
Emojis in it, yeah.
So, yeah.
I like that one. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for coming and talking to us today about leadership team building. Stay tuned, guys, because we have a special guest, Matt Jones, who describes himself as a serial entrepreneur, which I love, is going to talk a little bit more about leadership team building and just